can share handouts, and also if you are here today and you don't get a handout, or if you're watching this on video, you can get a handout from the church office. They have all the handouts for all of the sessions, and those handouts you can just call. They can send them to you over the internet, or I hate to even talk like that, or you can come and get a printed version. It's because I'm so tired of the internet and the way it requires me to spend much of my time just trying to deal with the mechanics of the internet. So we're looking at our fifth session, medical treatment options. And I think at some point I really need to point out, and I hope that people who come to the seminar or watch it on TV, I hope that they come to realize that Alzheimer's disease is not like a death sentence. Alzheimer's disease is bad, but sometimes in the course of the Alzheimer's disease, the patient and his loved one can still can still have good times. So I think that we as caregivers, we need to look particularly to try to identify the things that are good, because they're there, but we don't always see them. So it's, as you can see, a struggle for me. So we are so used to seeing the ads on TV for the magic pill that when it comes to Alzheimer's disease, I've had so many people ask me, well, is your patient on medication? Well, medication is an option, and it's an option that has to be carefully weighed, benefit against, the cost benefit against the blessing, the good part. And I carefully, when we're going to go through these medications today, I looked at this and I discovered, well, you could, on TV they show ads for every kind of disease, many of which I've never even heard of the disease. And it's always some name that you can't pronounce. And you have to ask your doctor for it. And in the ad, I'm not even sure what the disease is. But the result is that these people are happy. They're out there, they're in their kayaks on a beautiful lake and smiling and laughing, or they're going to the county fair, or, it's just such a bogus thing where the pharmaceutical companies are stirring the pot by spending millions of dollars of advertising, showing that this magic pill will make you happy. But you can't buy it, you have to ask your doctor. And the poor doctor is left in the middle because he has the pharmaceutical representative coming to him and saying, well, look, we've got X number of, so many thousands of people using this. You need to be prescribing this to your patients. And so they're under this kind of pressure because the patients are always asking for the Fimi Mama Nubribob, or something like that. And so we begin to think then, as a people, we begin to think, well, whatever the disease is, there's a medicine for it. I just have to find the happy pill. So we eagerly look for the medication, when in retrospect, if you talk to people who, like a couple of you have already come up to me today and said that you lost your spouse to Alzheimer's, they know better. Because these medications that we're going to look at are not going to cure Alzheimer's disease. They help with the symptoms, but even such help is transitory. So we're going to look at the small benefit that they give, and we're also going to take a hard look at the very considerable risks that are involved from side effects, risks like stroke and death. But sometimes, I'm the first to admit that there are cases, and I've been on them, I've had patients, Alzheimer's patients, where their behavior was so extreme, the conditions were so dangerous that there was no other way. They had to be put on medication because it just wasn't safe for them or their caregiver. Oh, thank you. Anybody need notes? We got more notes now. Well, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's hard for me to talk about some of this because I'm so invested in it. Starting with point 56, the magic pill. I went to the Alzheimer's Society, the National Institute on Aging, the National Institute of Health, and Mayo Clinic to get these data that I'm presenting here today. Dr. Alzheimer died around 1915. He didn't have a long life. He died probably, I think he was like 58. But seeing a picture of him, he was very much looking like a candidate for a stroke himself. I mean, he was very corpulent. I don't think he exercised. And so he didn't live a very long time. But he spent his life trying to research, trying to find the cure for Alzheimer's disease, which of course was named after him. And not only him, but he had colleagues. There was a whole group of physicians who followed him and worked with him in doing research because he thought he could find the cure. And here we are, more than 100 years later, we're no closer to the cure than we were then. That's pretty frightening. And the thing that people don't realize, and I'm going to bring it out at our last session when I talk about the state of Alzheimer's disease today in California, I don't know that anybody is aware of the horrendous train wreck that awaits us. There is a calamity of biblical proportions that's going to come down upon us, not in our lifetime, maybe in our grandchildren's lifetime, or surely in our great-grandchildren's lifetime. It's such a calamity that I'm just guessing now, I'm projecting from my reading, and I'm frightened by it. 1 out of 2 people 65 years and older will have Alzheimer's disease. Half of the people. That means in our aged population, half of the people are going to be incapacitated to some degree, maybe completely, by Alzheimer's disease. How is that going to impact society? How can society even support that? Now, that's without a cure. And they're still working on a cure. But right now, in the present political situation, I don't know that any research is going to be able to go forward. It takes thousands of dollars to do this medical research. It isn't cheap at all. So there's no point, at this point there is no cure, but these are the medications that can help. Drugs that temporarily ease some symptoms, and drugs that moderate some aspect of the disease progression. So in other words, they slow it down. Progression is really important. A friend of mine, a Redlands physician, who some of you would know if I mentioned his name, came down with Alzheimer's because he was a surgeon and he made a terrible error in surgery. And he immediately realized there was something wrong, and he was checked the next day and they diagnosed him with Alzheimer's disease. That was a Friday. And on Monday he sold his practice. And he was only like 58. And he died 20 months later. I mean, progression is everything in Alzheimer's disease. Because he went like, it was like a fire truck going down the highway. He just chewed right through all of the stages and he was dead. Now, I've also had patients in my practice as a hospice chaplain who had Alzheimer's disease, and they came to us and into our hospice program because they were close to dying, but they'd had Alzheimer's for 20 years. So there's a big difference between the two. Progression is everything in Alzheimer's disease. So if you could take a medication, if you're what we call in hospitals a fast burner, in other words, a person who's going through the trajectory really quick, maybe that medication would be helpful if you could slow down that progression. But there's other factors to consider in that equation. For example, do we really want to slow down the progression? I mean, if it's all going to be suffering, maybe we shouldn't. Some people's course of Alzheimer's is not really that bad. I mean, there are some people who are happier than they've ever been in their life because they have no cares and no worries. But they still know their family and still they know you, and you still have happy moments together. So it's hard to answer the question. We just have to be aware of the issues, the issue of progression, the issue of happiness, and the issue of how much they're going to suffer. The drugs that temporarily ease some symptoms don't ease it permanently. The improvement that you see won't last. So that's another issue to think about. And then the overarching concern, when we talk about medication of any kind actually, but particularly for Alzheimer's disease, is what are the side effects? They can be considerable. And we're not talking about one person in a million has this side effect. We're talking about one person in maybe 800 that has this side effect. The question really, should I give my loved one medication, is really answered by the circumstance. If your loved one is really, really suffering and really acting out and really in extreme behavior, then there's no question we have to do something, and that's what you do. Just hope that you'll get some respite from it. But if your loved one is not, if your loved one is one of the many people where the progression is very slow, then that's when you have to really flip the coin and say to yourself, well, look at this and look at that. Is this worth it? Is it worth the risk? I don't know. You must decide. And the other thing, too, I point out at the bottom of the page, patients will not just take one of these medications. They're going to end up with 4 or 5 of them. And that's the way it is. And then with 4 or 5 of them, you can imagine the chance of bad side effects. Side effects like, more strokes. Now, starting with number 60, here are the main medications. I didn't list every one of them, but I did go through and catalog each one. Some of them I can't even pronounce, and that just shows that you're a layman and not a doctor. But when you look at all of the side effects, like number 66, which lecanemab, possible side effects include brain swelling and bleeding, headache, cough, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, fever, chills, body aches, fatigue, high blood pressure, low blood pressure, and low oxygen. Whew. So you have to make a decision. So my advice is, if things are going well, don't rock the boat. If they're making it okay through the day without medication, don't think for a minute that it's going to be like on TV with a magic pill. There's no magic pill for Alzheimer's. We're just not there yet. Number 67, dietary supplements. You know, I've always been opposed to all of that. I'm not much for alternative medicine. But then 20 years ago, I was on a powerful medication for my arthritis. It was so bad in my fingers that I couldn't ride my bike anymore. And I had to go on this arthritis medication. And I was on it for 4 years. And it's a prescription-only thing. And finally my wife cornered me and said, you know, you've got to get off of that. It's going to kill your heart. She's an RN. And she was working at the time in hospice. So I didn't question her knowledge. I said, okay, I'll see what I can do. I got on the internet. It was shortly after I got a computer. I was slow getting a computer. I didn't get one until what? Well, around 2000. I got on the computer, and I thought, oh yeah, here comes the snake oil. And so I looked, up arthritis and things, and there's these pills for it and those pills for it. And I started reading about it, and I discovered that in the joint, there's something called hyaluronic acid that is like the oil for a machine, and it oils the joint, and that's helps relieve the bone on bone. Because like right now, I've got terrible arthritis in my right arm, so bad that right now I'm off swimming again. I'm not swimming. I'm hoping to I got 3 more meets this year. If I can just finish those 3, I think I'll probably be done, because it's just, I'm down to 1 stroke now. I mean, it's impossible. And so I read about hyaluronic acid, and then here were these pills. The company Nature's Way made hyaluronic acid. And of course, they just, raved about it on their ads. And all these testimonials from people, and I thought, oh yeah, well, I thought I better try something. So I ordered a bottle, which was a 60-day supply, and I started taking them twice a day. And then about 30 days in, one day I forgot to take my prescription, Relafin. I was taking Relafin, which is a prescription, a very powerful NSAID. And I realized I'd forgotten to take my prescription in the morning, but my hands were fine. My hands were just like if I had taken the prescription. Well, guess what? It was the hyaluronic acid. So I've been on it now for about 20 years. It gives me much better pain control than the Relafin. It costs 1/4 of what the Relafin cost, and has virtually no side effects. So I know from experience that in the alternative medicine field, there are things that work. You just have to find them and not be, sucked into believing that this or that is going to cure take this pill, will cure 67 diseases. Well, that's what we used to have at the county fair 100 years ago, when the guy would hold up the bottle, cures 67 diseases. And of course, we've gotten over that. So dietary supplements can help, can actually be a huge help, but they also can affect other medications. So be sure to let your doctor know what medications you're taking. So when you go to the doctor with your list of medicines, to give him, add these supplements that you're taking. Now, medications for psychological symptoms, those usually will worsen cognitive impairment. So if a person has psychological issues going in, those drugs are definitely not going to help. Antidepressants. The antidepressants can also make a person's cognition take a dump. So their cognitive processes just get worse, not because of the natural progression of Alzheimer's disease, but because of the effect of medications like things for psychological reasons or antidepressants. Anti-anxiety drugs. Well, anxiety is a huge factor in Alzheimer's patients. Most patients, I'm not saying all, but a huge proportions of Alzheimer's patients have anxiety. And I'm so lucky. But, you know, some patients don't have it. And the anxiety is manifested by the patient not wanting the caregiver out of his sight. That's common. Anxiety over where they are or where they want to go. Unrealistic requests like, I want to go home when they are home. So here are some things you can do. Always speak calmly. And oh my goodness, don't argue with the patient. I've struggled with caregivers who thought it was their duty to try to straighten their loved one out. They had Alzheimer's disease, and they were saying it was Thursday, and it really wasn't, it was Monday. But you know, don't argue, don't correct. So I've got a clock in the kitchen, and it has the day of the week, it has the time, whether it's morning or afternoon, and what else is there? Well, it gives the time, of course, of the day. So and I even use it as total orientation. I forget, what day is it today? I look, and there it is, right there. So you never have to argue then, but you cannot argue with the patient. It just destroys the patient. It worsens conditions. And I mean, I had a caregiver who was accusing the patient of having Alzheimer's disease. I mean, just absolutely doing everything wrong. So we've got to educate caregivers to not argue with the patient. If they say something wrong, just clam up. Don't correct it unless it has to be corrected, like they want to get dressed to go to church because it's Sunday. And I just point my wife well, anyway, anti-anxiety drugs are called anxiolytic. They can be used briefly in serious cases. Ativan and lorazepam are two examples. We do have to treat anxiety with Alzheimer's patients because that is very debilitative to cognitive impairment. It really, really does a number on it. And even though there can be side effects from those, we just try to administer them for as little of a time as possible. Antipsychotics, number 71. Antipsychotics have been used to manage extreme or dangerous behavior, and they come with severe side effects, and thus doctors don't prescribe them very often, and only when there's a real need for it. I mean, when your back is to the wall as the caregiver, and your patient, your loved one, is acting out, and there's nothing you can do. I mean, the next step would be to put them in an institution. Then that's when you try this kind of thing. Mayo Clinic suggests that the use of these non-drug interventions to improve quality of life for AD patients. So here's what Mayo Clinic says. Instead of the chemicals, try this. Number 73, occupational therapy. It does not change the course of the disease, but it works on improving actually the quality of life. It improves the mind. It improves the sense of self-being, of peace that a patient has. Physical therapy improves quality of life. It helps reduce falls. Falls are still a huge problem for the aged, not just for AD people, but everybody. I mean, falls, that's how, if you're 85, you better start worrying about falling. Because if you fall, that can put you in the hospital. That can break a hip, and you may never recover. I've seen a lot of our patients in hospice who fell, and that was the end. They never recovered. They died after getting in the hospital, and then complications, and oh my. So you just can't allow your patient to fall. Now, if you have a cooperative patient, the use of a walker is really good. And of course, with my last name being Walker, I had a joke. I would say that my wife has never gone to church without her walker. Speech therapy. So speech is a problem for probably 60 or 70% of Alzheimer's patients. It may be where some don't talk at all, and some can only say a few words. Some can talk very, very, very well, except they have aphasia, which I suffer from aphasia, and I don't have AD. Aphasia is when you can't think of the word. Like I was talking to a lady this morning in front of my house, and we were looking at these bushes that we planted, and they have a red flower. And see, right now, I can't think of the name. I couldn't think of the name then either. And so I said, well, the red flowered bushes. And then she knew what I was talking about. So aphasia can affect anyone who is older. It's just where the brain isn't plugging in as well as it used to. We're not as quick. So speech therapy can help in that. Conversation does become harder with patients when they have aphasia. I can do well because I work around. I can say the thingamajig, the whatchamajig. It's not too intelligent, but I can point to it or whatever. Nutrition. So nutrition is important. Now, I've got here, some patients do better by eliminating all caffeine because it can exacerbate agitation and sleep issues. But others can tolerate caffeine, and it brings them, peace and pleasure, and they feel more energetic. So you just have to go by what you got. And I mean, I was always a person who could tolerate caffeine. I could have like a Coke and go to bed right after and sleep, whereas most people get wired and you can't do it. And then, of course, I developed atrial fibrillation, and now I can't even have 1 teaspoon of caffeine because it throws me into AFib, which is very uncomfortable. So I know not to do it. You don't have to convince me. I believe it. The controlling principle should be, if it's good for your heart, it's good for your brain. And that's one thing I picked up from the American Alzheimer's Association, that slogan. If it's good for your heart, it's good for your brain. And so we have to start thinking about what we can do to help our brain. Exercise. Exercise is universally good. We're talking about moderate exercise, reasonable exercise, exercise that's approved by your doctor, exercise that's within the scope of your physical capabilities. I mean, don't take up pole vaulting when you're 85, for example, but walk around the block. Or if you can still ride a bicycle, ride your bicycle. The problem with exercise, of course, the growing limitation of the aging body. It more and more limits what your exercise is. Just like my growing arthritis is limiting my competitive swimming more and more, and I can see now that it won't be long when I won't be able to compete because the arthritis is just too bad. It's just too painful. I just can't do it. You just can't be in that much pain. And that's the natural progression of aging, that it limits our exercise. So we need to exercise while we can. My mother whose course of health I am closely following. I'm just like her in almost everything. When she was about 82, she had real trouble with her knee, and she got knee surgery, but it was never the same, and that ended her walking. Up to that point, she was walking around the neighborhood every day. And once she stopped walking, then her health really started to decline. Because that's what happens. If you're regularly exercising as an older person, if you just stop cold, you're going to suffer for it. All your systems are going to get worse. Everything is going to get worse. So that's why I'm trying to keep going as much as I can, just for quality of life, because that's a huge difference. I mean, think of being 85 and being active and vital, and being 85 and being in a hospital bed where you can't move. I mean, it's like a different world. And I've seen enough of that as a hospice chaplain to know that I need to do everything I can to keep my quality of life as good as it possibly can be. And, that's the good news. The bad news is that if I should stop exercising, then everything just goes bad. All your numbers will get worse. Your blood pressure and your sugar and everything just absolutely gets worse. Sleep. So I think, this is from my observation in dealing with Alzheimer's patients, patients may be getting up in the middle of the night or even get days and nights turned around. That's what I call a chaotic sleep pattern. Alzheimer's does that to many patients. That's the common thing, that sleep will be completely disrupted. And if you have a loud husband who has Alzheimer's, he may just include you in his wakefulness. And that's difficult, because then you're not getting sleep either. The other sleep pattern that I see, not quite as common as the first, is that sleep may last 15 to 18 hours a day. It's a long time to sleep. But that is something that you see. And you should be glad if you see it, because the brain is trying to repair itself. And thus, the brain hibernates, puts the patient into sleep. And that's good. Patients with a long period of sleep like that almost always have a very slow progression. Patients who have chaotic sleep patterns almost always have a very fast progression. They go together. So those are things that you discover about your patient, your spouse, as you deal with them. And you wonder, like if a person doesn't get up till noon and then they take a 3-hour nap, can they sleep again? But come 9 o'clock, boom, they do it again. So that's why sleep is so important. So for caregivers, my recommendation is try to avoid waking your patient if you can. Now, sometimes there's a medical appointment that you can't get in the afternoon. You just have to wake her in the morning. Then you have to start way early trying to wake him up for it. But that's very disruptive to whatever processes are going on. And so that's the rare time that I would say that you have to do it. Otherwise, try to make all of their appointments for the period of time that they're usually awake, which normally would be late afternoon or mid-afternoon or whatever it is for your patient, like around noon maybe. And that way it fits in to their natural rhythm. We want to keep that natural rhythm going. And for heaven's sakes, don't complain to them that they're sleeping all the time. That's a good thing. Number 80, recognizing stress. This is really important. And the principle is that change brings stress to Alzheimer's patients. There was one patient where the husband changed the pictures hanging in the room, and the patient came out and right away saw the pictures were rearranged. I mean, this is amazing. And she said, "Oh, what happened to the pictures?" And then 2 minutes later, "Oh, what happened to the pictures?" And then another 2 minutes, "Oh, what happened to the pictures?" Like for 50 times, like for 2 hours, she's going like this. And so that calls for immediate action. Don't think for a minute. Don't think for a minute that you can get away with that. You have to change it back. And it's really urgent. And it might not just be seeing physical things. The patient can get upset about changes in schedule, or be very aware if they get upset when you go away. So, and the way to check on that is when you go away, whether it's to the store to get groceries, or if you go to Detroit for a swim meet, whatever, have your replacement caregiver report to you if she is asking constantly of where you are, because that's a sign of stress. So if that's the case, then you just have to start planning to stay close and minimize how long you're gone. And then eventually it'll get down to you can't leave the house without a substitute caregiver there with her. Or it would come down to placing her. And placing the patient is something that you have to struggle with. Some of us say, like over my dead body. And for others of us, it's essential to place them. And the controlling factor, the key to all of that, is safety. Is the patient safe? Are you safe? And if the answer to either one of those is no, then you have no choice. You have to do it. But the tables are stacked also when you have a 90-pound widow, 90-pound lady who's soon to be a widow, a 90-pound caregiver, and a 220-pound husband who's a patient. So right there, you got to be really alert to safety, because he could hurt her. Not that he'd want to, but look at the situation. So those are all factors you have to consider. I think that it's always an easier situation when the woman is the patient and the husband is the caregiver. Although I will say that men, for as strong as they are physically, statistically it's proven you don't live as long as a woman. And also, you don't do as well as a widower. Men do not do as well. So, the husband as the caregiver is looking forward to that time when he'll be alone. And for some men, it's really, it's a struggle. They're just not built for that. They've been married for 60 years and always had their helpmate, and now suddenly they're alone. So, those are all issues that are in the mix, and those things as a caregiver you can't help but think about. I have seen so many women who lost their husband to either Alzheimer's or to cancer in hospice or something else, and you would not believe the way that they blossomed. Now, I'm not saying they didn't hurt or they didn't grieve. It was awful. But they just blossomed. They did things. They came out of the bereavement period as a whole person, and they did things they never did before in their life. I mean, like I had one lady who took up painting at like age 69 or something, and she was an incredible painter, ended up having her own show down in Palm Desert. And she'd never even touched a paintbrush while her husband was alive. So that happens. And I suppose it could happen with men. I just haven't seen it. I don't know. Then we come to music. It's interesting that Alzheimer's disease does not affect the music centers of the brain. It's still intact. And I was in Palm Desert, and I visited with a lady who hadn't spoken in months. And as I found, my experience told me what to do. Sing. And I'm not a singer, but I had to sing in hospice because there was no one else to come and sing for me. And what I discovered was the sicker you are, the better I sound. At least that's what they said anyway. So I started singing Amazing Grace. And by the time I got to the word grace, she joined me. And she sang right along, had it all in her mind, knew the words to the end. And she was then greatly improved. She was saying a few words then. And I don't know how long that went on, but at least it went on for the time I was there. And it was all because of music. That there's still that music in their brain. And she happened to be a person who had, was a Christian, a churchgoer, and loved the music, loved the song, Amazing Grace. And she just plugged right into that. And so, boy, after then, when I came every week, as I did to all hospice patients, then I just went ahead and sang to her every time. Questions? Yeah. Occupational therapy is different than physical therapy. Physical therapy is just the movement, the various movements. Occupational therapy includes other things, the things, for example, that you need for daily living. So in physical therapy, we're just worried about working the shoulder. See, I can't do this with my right shoulder. But in occupational therapy, we're worried about picking things up, having the skill to bend over. How do you bend over when you are 85? Well, one thing the occupation therapist will get is will give you is this thing that grips. You grip it.
Occupational therapy, after I had one knee surgery, was they showed me how to get on your shoes and socks, which when you've had knee surgery or hip, you cannot do that. So, yeah, that's good.
Occupation within the home.
Yeah, not like teaching you to be a truck driver or something. Any other comments? Well, thank you for coming. It's a heavy topic, and for me, quite raw, so it's hard to get through it. But if I wait, I just think that that's wrong, too. There's information that needs to get out. People need to hear it.
And God is your source of strength.
So, yeah. Think of today, Psalm 46.
In Galatians 5:22, God gives us those things.
Right.
That's what I pray almost every day for 5 years.
Right.
He gives you
He
love, joy, peace, patience,
does.
goodness, gentleness.
Yeah, I don't know what non-Christians do. I don't know how they can get through it. But we're lucky.
I'm glad I married a big, strong woman. About the same size.
Okay. So we'll see you next month. We're on for the next 2 months. Um,
Yeah.